Hunter here, back in Wrecked America, and it's a wonderful day here in the neighborhood, and want to get cooking again
Wonderful day in the Wrecked America neighborhood.
in
Love
Wrecked
it.
America neighborhood. Welcome back, Dr. Jimmy. How you be, man?
Thank you, sir. Thanks for having me back. I leave and sometimes I don't know what the next invitation is going to be.
Well, you're always
So
welcome,
I'm
brother.
glad the invitation was to come back.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
all good. All
yeah,
good. Thank you.
you're always welcome. I think. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, look, let's get cooking. Um, I want to. We last. We left off on this. We were talking our conversation. We come to a point where, in terms of your story around your um, dealing with your characters and cast of characters, and we were talking about this business of gifting, and we said we let that marinate, give that some thought. As we pick that back up, I had the thought, having gone back and kind of reflected on our conversation about our cast of characters, and I wanted to be more precise in terms about this idea of the latent powerful character or the LPC um, being a part of our personality, of who we are, that has a personality of its own, and isn't just a isn't just doesn't just reflect some kind of behavior that some deviant behavior has to be modified or has to be beaten out of us or something of that effect. But anyway, but it has a personality, and the latency being can be very subtle sometimes. That's what's meant. I mean, it's not it's perhaps rarely, but not most often, is it uh, is it clear uh, how powerful it is. Its
Mhm.
power is latent. Um, so it can be that can be in any of us. It might be my tendency to be a jokester, or a jester, or my wannabe comedian side. Um, that, um, but it has power. What do you think about that? It can have power. What do you think about that?
It it can. No, it fits well with some of the experiences that I've had um, uh, in my life before recovery, and they became manifest as I worked through various notions of how people function from day to day. I have studied certainly a lot of different traditions, philosophies, faith traditions, and approaches to storytelling, much of which came together in some of the work by a 20th century writer, Joseph Campbell, and
Mhm.
his work on myth and magic.
Yes, yes, Brother Campbell.
And
Yes.
and Campbell alludes to, in fact, describes in some detail uh, some of the notions that I think are precursors to this idea of latent powerful characters. It maybe to some extent more explicitly. I admit that it's been a while since I've referred to the documents themselves. So, but as I recall, he describes some of the Native American thinking on the subject, where each man, as he develops a sense of himself, is helped to understand that he possesses four powerful characters in and of himself.
Mm.
They're identified as the king, the lover, the warrior, and the joker or the jester.
Mm. Mhm.
And so I think these archetypes, as I
Mhm.
think they're referred to,
Mhm.
um, are clearly available to us, and that describes their latency, if you will. But we can espouse aspects of those archetypes as we proceed through the world in various roles that we may play in our own lives with others or just with ourselves.
In our conversation, our last conversation, you walked us through some of your past, your story, and you identified. You were able to describe for us, for the audience, around different periods in your life, how you identified yourself, and in some detail. The question I had is applying what the four archetypes you just said. Have you thought about not just how you identified yourself at various periods in your life, but how those archetypes have manifested in your life, and they become your part of your cast of characters, of that are part of who you are and the story you're telling. Has that been does that make any sense? Is that part of the work you've been doing?
Well, I think it's a useful question and a useful exploration, and I think the archetypes are often there, and different ones can manifest at different points of our journeys. So that being the case, I can suggest that, and I describe basically three different stages of my life, and certainly developmentally, they're more or less present as I become more of who I am ultimately. So it's my guess. These are explorations. Everything I have is a working assumption until I get more data, and I can change the assumption. So I'm not suggesting absolute knowledge on these things. So just giving you my opinion and what I've experienced.
Can you, are you able to identify any experience that an experience in your life that any of these characters or archetypes, if you want to use that term, any experiences that an expression of that character in its native voice?
Yes.
What is to share with us? What its native voice sounds like? Is that possible?
Let's see. What its native voice sounds like. That's an interesting way to put the question. I can describe situations and time frames even when I can recognize what I believe to be the voice of a particular archetype or character in this case. So, for example,
yeah, thank you.
A couple come to my mind, anyway, I'm kind of thinking out loud, and so bear with me. But the first one, thank you. The first one that comes to mind is my work as a sponsor in recovery programs. I am oftentimes operating in a very different voice. it is a voice that not only reflects my personal experience, but also my connection to a power beyond myself in a very fascinating way. In a very fascinating way. Um, and my job in those moments is to let it, not to edit it, not to overthink it, but to rely on the wisdom of, shall I say, my counsel, to allow it to be what it is in the presence of another. And that would be my sponsee in that case. Those are very intimate, sacred, I'll dare say, moments. And I've commented on that with my sponsees, and they're pretty amazed by it too. And I'm glad they can experience it. I'm grateful for them that that's the opportunity I get to experience it. I believe those are my some of my best moments, meaning most effective moments as a leader, which would manifest the king archetype. The leader by not leading, the leader by knowing when I'm leading and when something else is leading me and the other. Those to me are king moments.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, that's one. Now, another one that occurs to me off the top of my head, I believe I do reflect all
Are you
four
gonna,
archetypes.
okay, can we stay with that one for a minute? Can you say
Okay,
that?
sure.
Okay, yeah. We're talking about so we're talking about if I'm for the audience, um, you're connecting this archetype to your recovery and you're being a sponsor, and it's in the vein, if you will, of the king archetype, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Question. And as you talk about that type and how that applies to your work with sponsees, as you said, I get the sense that there is it's as you describe it, I get the sense that it's nuanced with a certain gentleness of spirit.
Yes.
Which I would think is probably unique to you. Might you be able to explain, because I could see someone, if I understand what a sponsor is, being more of in that capacity, more in an effort to help someone, but more of a raging bull. Kind of
Sure.
a if I can say, kind of a quote unquote angry Bob type.
Not
But go ahead. But that's not you. I don't see it.
We're talking principles, not personalities here, of course. But we're talking characters too.
Right.
And
right.
there's a character.
Right. But that ain't you.
So many ways.
but that ain't you.
Well, and yeah, I can be angry Bob. I can, and I, I have a warrior. And that's what it reminds me of is I can play warrior. I can be, not just play, not just perform. I can be a warrior, and I can bring out my warrior at the wrong times, an angry Bob type situation, um, and sometimes at the right times. I can stand up and you know speak truth to power.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, whether or not I unsheathe my sword,
Mm-hmm.
I'm still in the warrior mode in that situation. And I can see where some sponsors approach it in the warrior mode. I haven't found that useful for me because my approach to sponsorship requires me to not only lead and address the spiritual warfare required to work the spiritual program that is recovery, but also to be connected with the source of the spiritual nature that I am. And I do that best in the leader king character. So, yes, that is my approach. I'm not saying it's the only approach.
Yeah. Is there any?
But I'm saying it's my approach.
It's your approach. And my question goes to then where I was going is there something in your experience that has informed that approach out of your own experience, pain, story, past, that yes. that informs that approach that you bring to that work?
I think my answer is eventually yes, meaning a lot of little things have led up to it. I would have early in recovery, I would have expected my role in sponsoring to be that of a warrior, but I managed to, in my ignorance, obtain a sponsor who completely upended my rackets around what it means to lead. And that was the beginning of me asking questions about what leadership looked like. I grew up professionally with various types of leaders. Many of them the so-called Type A drill instructor approach to management in corporate America, if you will, or to the medical environment, or to any of it, the big doc in the medical world, or the hard driving manager, in the corporate world, as the model of success. And then I started seeing other managers who brought a grace to the position that allowed more effective expression of individual creativity, even in corporate structure and, shall I say, strictures. Even in limited capacity, people can be incredibly creative if you let them. Well, that didn't come through in the first approach. And I started seeing examples of that in my professional life, later on. This was informing me, but not necessarily changing my own militaristic style of management. Okay, I was hardcore, and I approached it that way. We took some management training activities, and then some evaluations of our styles, including from our employees. And I had 60 or 70 at the time. And the two most extreme driven, focused managers in the entire organization of 1,000 people were, number one, my boss, who was 98 out of 100 on the scale, and then I was 96 out of 100 on that particular scale. So it was just actually consistent with me being operating in the extreme. And the service had had other implications for other aspects of my life, like addiction and operating in the extreme in many ways. So I was very much wedded to that approach, and I began seeing alternatives to that approach that were quite effective. I've mentioned about my sponsor. I kind of started in the middle, and I'm piecing things together. So excuse me, but
Sure.
Here we go. But again, with his gentle guidance, and my sponsor's as perfect as I am, meaning not, and he has his foibles and issues, and certainly so do I. But it informed me, and as I proceeded through recovery and recognizing that my my approach, which involved keeping exceptional focus on a particular thing, was causing me to lose sight of things related to what was put in focus, and often lose sight of the real message of what I was trying to get at. So I had to change. If I was going to get more of the message, I had to change my rackets, change the blinders, actually remove the blinders. So over the past 15 years, I've been doing a lot of work of removing those blinders and basically trying to get out of my own way.
Gotcha. Speaking of the message, a pause that refreshes. We're going to pay some bills here. Dr. Jimmy, stay with me. Listen, Back to America family. If you love what we're doing here, I want to invite you to go over to movingtheworld.us. Look at the work of our cooperative there, and the services we provide, and help us pay some bills. So that's our commercial. We have a wonderful cooperative that we're developing that helps to fund. You can look at the About page and learn more about that. But if you like what you're hearing and want more of it, go over to movingtheworld.us. Okay, thank you. Back to you, Dr. Jimmy. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right. So that was number one. That was type. So we that was number one. Thank you for. So we were talking about the King Sage.
How I could get there.
Yeah, I got that's what we want to know. How what has helped you in your experience to get there. Mm-hmm. So let's go to number two. What would be type number two?
Well, I again, you're asking me, so you're getting my opinions. I believe
I don't want anybody else's.
Well, you'll get those at another time. How's that? So, I believe I short-circuited my lover archetype, okay, with the particular addictions that I picked. The nascent lover in me was not nourished. From my point of view, the reality may have been different, but that's how it felt at the time, and that deep sense of longing, loneliness, chopped up childhood, trying to reestablish friendships, failing to do so, things like all of that was an unrequited lover role that was developing, and without its effective development, I short-circuited that archetype in my life. And so part of my recovery work has been recovering the lover in me, if you will. And I can see this, and lover is not simply the romantic, it's not simply the interrelational aspect. It's the part of me that loves nature, that enjoys the smell of cooking bread, that loves a walk in the mountains, Okay, that love that is refreshed simply by being outside and enjoying the world in which we live. The lover expresses himself, herself, in a variety of ways that were impossible when it was shriveled and left unfed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So,
All right.
go ahead.
I was going to ask how we might encounter you differently in those. Is there any dialogue in any how we might encounter you differently when you're in that mode, when you're in that space, when you're feeling that? How does that? How would we encounter you? Would we encounter you differently when you're in that? In how so?
Playful. Yeah. Playful. Expressing an abundance of nature, just satisfied with everything around me, just at ease in my own skin.
At peace.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a different kind of, it's for, at least for me, it's not the profound sacredness of the other role necessarily, although I do find the sacred, in my enjoyment. My lover will stop and be in awe. I'll see a scene and I can not only appreciate that, but I can feel the power of the scene permeate me. And that's my lover just standing back and just smiling and enjoying. Mm-hmm. So that's a different kind of sacred from the role I was describing before. Mm-hmm. So it has, the role still has a depth, but it's still different from what I was describing with the king. Okay?
Yeah. That's good. Let's further to use your term. Let's try and disentangle here a little bit.
Okay.
From this archetype, in terms of lover, from jester or funny guy, kind of comic. And let me help you. Okay, your response control once again is.
Fair enough.
What came to mind is, as you're saying that, where I want to go is the lover and the jester and the notion of quote unquote a dirty joke.
Okay.
And how those two seem to, that kind of disentangles that. Well, I think that kind of separates the lover side from the jester side, because it's. But I'm not saying that's. Oh, that's a good. But that's necessarily. But here's what I'm saying, because when we the quote unquote dirty joke, somehow you were saying playful and loving, and that was all together. But this idea of quote unquote is somehow that the comic or gesture side is dirty. You see what I'm saying? It's somehow in that, and we kind of that kind of, yeah. If you can relate.
We're kind of verging into a territory that I'm less comfortable with.
Okay.
I want to admit that up front.
Okay.
But the Joker, one of the aspects of the Joker is also that of the magician.
Okay.
Okay. So the Joker, the jester, has some additional magical powers. Okay. That are not immediately apparent to the lover, who has powers of his own, but they're different.
How for you? How are they different for you?
Well, again, it's the toughest role for me to articulate. Not that I don't have it, not that it doesn't appear, but it's just more difficult for me to separately identify, shall I say? So I do it with difficulty, and I don't do much of it. So let's see. Like I say, so I do it with some comparatives to the lover. The lover has an innocence in his approach to things and a vulnerability which allows him to be loved. That I haven't found an expression of in the Joker magician. The Joker magician is certainly more crafty, can be more manipulative. Certainly, that's part of his power, and is very much in the moment. Let's see. I have had less success in the Joker magician role as a planner and strategic thinker. Those seem to be less available to me in that role than they are in the warrior or king role, for example. So the lover is very much in the moment. I think the magician Joker is pretty much in the moment too, at least. And again, I would refer you back to more authoritative sources, but part of what I understood from those studies is that oftentimes we articulate these ourselves in our own journeys, and this is how they manifest themselves to me. These archetypes.
Mm-hmm. Experiences. Are there any? We've kind of delved into three here, and I get I think we're following you. The audience is following you. But any experiences that you can, like you for the first one, you brought sponsorship regarding, and the lover is the lover. I mean, so we get but just want to. Are there any experiences that are unique to you and your journey, your story, to help us better understand you in these characters for you?
Well, I was thinking particularly of the Joker magician, and something we were alluding to before we got into the session, specifically. What's that?
There we go.
What's that? And how that, I'll settle that. How that.
That was good. That was good. That's what I'm looking for.
How that has been useful as a way of cutting through tense negotiations, through difficult professional settings, by offering a genuine disarmament to some difficulty that we happen to be dealing with at the time. I can just tactically bring a sense of humor, lighten things up, bring us back to recognizing that we got a lot of checks flying around our heads, not bullets, for example. back in the day, or things like that, where I can help reset the table for more productive conversations. And I get to do that with the jester, with a little bit of magic from that role, and change the complexion of a conversation in the process. So I've used it tactically, if you will.
Yeah. What was the fourth type? With the fourth type for you?
Fourth type was the warrior type, and that's the one that I had the most practice with early in my career. It's rather ironic because I specifically chose as a teenager not to enter military service. In fact, registered as a conscientious objector back in the day. And yet, the disciplined approach to activities certainly served me well, even though I was not in the military. I certainly learned from those who had been, and adopted many practices that I had been brought to my attention by ex-military leaders, one sort or another. So I attempted to bring a very disciplined and yet combative approach to many of the activities that I undertook. And in the world in which we live, I was quite successful with that approach. So I kept doing it. And, you've got one note that you play, and people like that note. Keep playing it.
Awesome.
So,
awesome.
Anyway, so that is the fourth role, and I mention at least now, not because it's not there. On the contrary, it still serves me well in helping me to focus on a particular issue. And I can get a lot done that way, but it still has a lot of toxicity toxicity for me because I have overused it.
Gotcha. Well, Dr. Jimmy, look, we got the four types on the table, and I think that's a plateful for today. Oh. So we're going to pause there and pick up the conversation. And explore these types in some more detail our next time. And if you grace us with your presence again and come back and
love to
share some more. So
look forward to it. And okay. Maybe I can maybe I can sound like a frog next time. I don't know. They're not. Whatever the product happens to be, right?
Yeah, there we go. Well, look, audience, again, we if you like hearing Dr. Jimmy Jarvis and what he's sharing with us, again, I invite you to head on over to movietheworld.us and look at what we got going on there with our cooperative and do some business with us. And we keeps the lights on, keeps wonderful people like Dr. Jimmy in this podcast moving forward. So, Dr. Jimmy, thank you again. We'll have you back soon, and you be well.
Thank you, Hunter.
Okay, Hunter out. Okay, Hunter out. Okay, Dr. Jimmy, be well. Peace, baby. All right, next time.
Peace out.
Bye-bye.